Hi there, Noble here. Now before we start with this video, I kind of want to give a little bit of a context behind why this video came out all of a sudden. So back at around August, September of last year, I wrote a script for this Xenoblade Chronicles video. I was so happy with this script. The script turned out to be amazing, and I put so much time and effort into the script because I wanted it to be good. I wanted it to have a bunch of information. I wanted it to have like a lot of personal stories. So I actually legit did research for about 2 weeks, and I was really happy with the script. So I started recording the lines. I started recording a video for it. And then I started editing. Now, before that, actually recording the audio for this, I had a little bit of problems. This is where my first problem started. The audio was a little bit jumbled up and it was a little bit terrible, but I managed to recover it as best as I can. After that, I started editing this video for about 2 weeks. I was pretty much almost done with it. I was almost halfway done with it, and then I bought a new hard drive. And the file for this video was gone. I could not find it. And I thought it was deleted until a few days ago, or until a few weeks ago, I actually found the file again. So I restarted the project and I thankfully finished this video by now. So yeah, a little bit of context, a little bit of backstory to this video before the video starts. As you can see, my hair is gonna look completely different in this. This was recorded a while ago, so just to let you guys know. But yeah, that's gonna be it. Enjoy the video. Warning. This video contains spoilers for Xenoblade Chronicles on the Wii, Xenoblade Chronicles X, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, and the Xenosaga series. Viewer discretion is advised. Xenoblade Chronicles is a masterpiece. I've played a ton of games throughout my life, but none have given me more hours of enjoyment than Xenoblade Chronicles. I'm very confident in saying that Xenoblade Chronicles is in my top 5 games of all time. It's just that fucking good. A little bit of history lesson between me and this game. I remember back in 2011, I was sick and admitted to the hospital. Obviously, nothing serious. But at that time, I was unable to get out of bed and play in the summer sun with my friends outside. I was both bored and sad that I couldn't hang out with any of my friends or enjoy the summer sun as I was supposed to. So my parents decided to get me a new game to cheer me up. And that game was Xenoblade Chronicles for the Wii. The odds of my parents, who have no knowledge of video game whatsoever, picking up a game like Xenoblade Chronicles for me was, well, it was almost like they changed the future. Having no idea what this game was, I started playing it, and at first, I didn't like it. I was so used to JRPGs like Final Fantasy, Dragon's Quest, and Pokemon that it just turned me off in a way. Slow JRPGs where you would decide whether you wanted the battle to last forever or just for a few seconds. Essentially, you would dictate the pace. But for Xenoblade Chronicles, it was a whole new experience for Kid Me because it was way more slower than what I was used to. Xenoblade's combat was a mix between an RTS and an action JRPG, with your characters automatically attacking the enemy and you, as the player, making the decision of picking out what special attack you wanted the character to do at the right time, essentially making you dictate the flow of battle. That is, if the AI works with you at times. But with this new way of combat came new challenges and new ways of learning. If the enemy was suffering break, you could topple them and make them immobilized and incapable of attacking. If you toppled them, you could daze them for an even further duration of these effects. But back then, I didn't understand what this game was, and I was in deep frustration. It wasn't what I wanted, and I guess I did act a bit like a spoiled brat. But after accepting that my parents couldn't just return the game, I played it after a few hours of grumbling. I started playing it for 10 minutes. Then 30 minutes, then 2 hours, then almost every day. The game consumed me, but in a good way. I fell in love with everything it had to offer. I went from wanting to break the disc in two to wanting to never get better again just so I can play this game all the time. Unfortunately, that part didn't happen. This game managed to just capture my heart and capture my attention. I know this might sound a bit cliche, but this game essentially became my best friend. This game, these characters, the environment, the atmosphere, the fucking soundtrack, and the plot, it all made me happy. And I'm glad my parents didn't return the game to the store. It made me sad as well that I almost had my parents return this masterpiece of a game, but my overall personal experience for this game was, well, it was special to me. Xenoblade Chronicles is a masterpiece to me. I've played so much of this game. Like, I think I've poured roughly 300 combined hours for all the save files on the Wii. I love this game so fucking much that I even bought the 3DS version of this game. But my love for this once niche and cult classic franchise was not in vain, because as of today, Xenoblade Chronicles, the series, has become a staple of Nintendo and has become a household name by many diehard JRPG fans. While it's not as popular as Final Fantasy or even Dragon's Quest, it's still a monumental achievement for this once niche franchise that was clinging to life by a mere thread to a now flourishing franchise that has proven to many that it's worthy to be called a masterpiece. Today, I want to sit down and talk about how Xenoblade Chronicles was once a franchise that was almost forgotten.
Oh yeah, baby! Now it's writing time!
The year was 2006. The staff at Monolith Soft was low on morale after the release and commercial failure of the Xenosaga series. A series of games that centered around the main protagonist, Shion Uzuki, escaping Gnosis and traveling to the second militia aboard the freighter known as Elsa. The Xenosaga series was supposed to have more than 4 games, but the series was prematurely ended due to its commercial failure. Despite the game having a strong debut and selling over 240,000 units in Japan, the series as a whole underperformed, as stated by Takashi himself. Because of this failure, Tetsuya Takashi was struck by the idea of people living on top of enormous titans, and started writing the concept for it down. Yusuyuki Hone thought that this concept looked interesting and started to model the characters in 3D. The concept was so amazing that they even made a diorama. The project was initially called Monado, Beginning of Worlds, but was later changed by Satoru Iwata himself to Xenoblade, to honor Tetsuya's previous franchise. Xenoblade had no initial plan to release in North America, but due to a fan campaign known as Operation Rainfall, such a cool fucking name, they managed to convince Nintendo to bring over Xenoblade Chronicles to North America alongside with The Last Story and Pandora's Tower. Due to Operation Rainfall, Nintendo later confirmed that Xenoblade Chronicles would be headed for the States in April of 2012. Reception for Xenoblade was fairly amazing, with the outlets scoring it in 92 out of 100, but the game did only sell 200,000 units in Japan, barely 400,000 in North America, and 300,000 in Europe. It was clear that there was some sort of interest in this game, but compared to other game franchises at the time like Mass Effect 3 or Final Fantasy 13-2, it didn't stand a chance in terms of sales. Good thing both of those games were not good. The plot to Xenoblade Chronicles was fairly simple at the start, but then gets very interesting the further you move on. It starts as you playing as a Holmes known as Shulk, a citizen of Colony 9 who is tasked to take revenge against the warring race known as Mechon for destroying their colony and killing their friend and his significant other Fiora. Along the way, he also encounters new friends and allies like Ryan, Dunban, Sharla, Ricky, Melia, and Seven, and must also unlock the true meaning and power behind the Monado, while making their way from one Titan to the other, having you explore the Bionis and the Mechonis, the 2 warring titans who have been frozen in combat for centuries. Xenoblade Chronicles, to its core, is the textbook definition of a hidden gem on the Wii. If you are a JRPG fan, you owe it to yourself to play this game if you haven't. From beautiful sceneries to an amazing 95-piece soundtrack to an unforgettable story, Xenoblade Chronicles was a masterpiece worthy of the title. But alas, after its initial release, the game lay dormant in sleep for a while. A once rich world filled with stories world building, and endearing characters lay dormant and almost forgotten. That was until 2014.
I'm really feeling it!
Years have gone and passed, and any semblance of Xenoblade seemed to have vanished in the wind, or even like tears in the rain. That was until a Director's Room Me post revealed Shulk to be a playable character in Smash 4. And he was also leaked online, but let's ignore that part. And a few months later, the announcement of Xenoblade Chronicles 3D on the 3DS was also made public. Xenoblade was making a comeback to those who knew who the character or the game was. When the trailer for Shulk came out, I was the only one in my class excited, as well as probably a couple hundred people on the internet. I will admit the inclusion of Shulk came to me as a shock, and a surprise, because who the fuck expected Shulk? Why would they include him in? His game did terribly and wasn't up to snuff to other sales like Mario or Zelda. Well, it was to raise awareness and exposure towards this series. In an interview with US Gamer, Shigezaku Yamada stated that, "I think this design and the nature of the attacks themselves left a lasting impression on the audience," Yamada says. On top of that, it seems like he's considered a strong playable character with a good performance. So I'm happy about that too. It was clear that the developers really cared about the series. It was their baby, their masterpiece. And they also used it to promote Xenoblade Chronicles for the 3DS, but whatever. Did this tactic work? No. But I did buy it, so I might have a problem. The port for the 3DS did worse than the Wii did in its first week, amassing only 56,000 to an 80,000 units sold in its first week. In total, it sold over 500,000 throughout its lifetime. So, yeah. Yes, the game wasn't really feeling it. But not all hope was lost. Because with the good sales, according to Iwata, Monolith Soft was able to make another entry in the Xenoblade series. This time, bigger, better, stronger! The next entry was so big that Kawabata, the executive producer for the game, even stated that it barely fit on the 32GB Wii U disc. This was a good sign, because it meant we would get more of the amazing world building and endearing characters just like the first game, but this time at a massive scale. Remember, Xenoblade Chronicles on the Wii was almost 9GB large, and this was going to be 22.7GB large. Surely, this game's gonna be good and is gonna save the franchise from a curse of not being able to break 1 million sales, right? It did not. Xenoblade Chronicles X sold 840,000 units in its lifetime run, selling over 200,000 physical copies during the month of December during its launch year of 2015. It did better than its predecessors, but unfortunately lost steam the following year. Xenoblade X brought a few obstacles in its way in the form of various factors that plagued the game. The developers and the team decided against using cutting-edge technology when designing the game, essentially using their existing lessons and experiences from their time developing Xenoblade 1. This is a good development practice, I guess, since you don't want to strive too far away from what made the original unique. But also bad since there was a self-imposed limitation added even further in the form of not using middleware to speed up the production process for the game. Another problem was the battle system being based upon the basic mechanics that were used in Xenoblade 1, but with an increased sense of speed to make it feel more like an action game. This just ruined the game. Instead of Xenoblades being a game where you slowly plan your attacks and your strategy to defeat an enemy or a boss, it was now relegated to a generic action game. I get that the first Xenoblade was slow, but it was slow for a reason. If the battles were faster, you wouldn't have time to react to certain attacks, button prompts, or even environmental changes or enemy attacks. Xenoblade's combat was slow to give the player a chance to plan out ahead, not to have them mindlessly attack an enemy with a few button presses. Xenoblade X looked like a Xenoblade, but wasn't. It was an old car with a completely different set of brakes than what it was using. The first Xenoblade was like playing chess. You go slow and plan your attacks. Xenoblade X was like playing mahjong while smoking 14 tons of methamphetamine. They also took out the healer class. Why the fuck would you do that? I have my problems with Xenoblade X, but overall, it's a fine game. Just not a Xenoblade game to me, you know what I'm saying? So much so that you have a character customization in this game. Why? That's what my Xenoblade was missing! Making my own character instead of getting to love and know the original characters from the story! Despite my hatred for X, I think it's a fine game and everything. It just missed the marks in terms of sales and in terms of gameplay. And this made me worried for this franchise. This once niche and unknown franchise was starting to go into obscurity. That was until it was given one more chance. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was amazing. Not only did it bring back most of the core features from Xenoblade 1, it also brought over the good parts from Xenoblade X. It was essentially a mix of both worlds merged into one. Xenoblade 2 focused more on story-driven aspects, unlike Xenoblade X, which was more focused on gameplay and open-world exploration. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was big, but not too big. The characters, the story, and the gameplay, they were all familiar, but new. It was a return to form for the series. It introduces us to amazingly well-written characters like Nia, Pyra, Mithra, Rex, Morag, and Bridget, and of course, the Zekinator and Pandora. Am I forgetting anyone else?
Alright, let's do it again.
Put your best
Don't forget me!
You put
I can't do it! Why is that even relevant? Don't forget. Why does that apply to the situation? As soon as they turn around, don't forget me, and they all just scream it at the same time, bro.
Oh yeah, can't forget Padraig. But not only did it have amazing and memorable moments and characters, it also had a memorable story and a way too good soundtrack. Seriously, go ahead and listen to Xenoblade Chronicles 2 soundtrack. It's so fucking good. This is what Xenoblade was all about. Not a character creator or a subpar story, but an endearing one. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was worthy of being called a sequel to the first. Also, spoilers, the ending for Xenoblade 2 connects with Xenoblade 1, seeing as though it's a parallel universe happening at the same time. It's very confusing, but it makes sense, and it's insanely fucking good. I like it when a game connects to one another in one way. Also, the ending for this game where Numa sacrifices herself to save all rest was just chef's kiss. From minute 1, I was in love with Xenoblade 2. It gave me a sort of warm, nostalgic feeling, just like the first one. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was set in Allrest. The entire world was covered in a sea of clouds. Humans would live on top of giants known as Titans, just like in the first game. But instead of fighting against other beings like Mechons, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 takes the story a bit deeper and starts to play around with the world building a bit more than the first game. This time you play as a character called Rex, a Cloud Sea salvager who was contracted by mercenaries to explore an abandoned ship and encounters a legendary blade named Pyra and becomes her driver on accident. After coming in contact, he'd be double-crossed by the mercenaries who hired him and is killed in the process, only to be reawakened by his blade and essentially being kept alive by her due to Pyra sharing her core crystal with him. See, because of this, Rex is now bound to Pyra. If Rex dies, Pyra dies. We're only an hour in, and the story is already better and way more in-depth than Xenoblade X. This game introduces a new concept to the series known as blades. Think of them as like beings that can be summoned by people known as drivers. Blades can be obtained in the game through opening up core crystals. This is the part where it gets a bit confusing, whether the game is a gacha game or not. It's not a gacha game per se, where you would pay money for these core crystals. You can easily find them in the game just by exploring different collection points, playing minigames, and sometimes doing quests, but it is a quote-unquote gacha game where the acquisition of what blade you'll get are random. I think. It's really confusing, but it's just believe me. You don't necessarily need all of the rare blades. You can make do with just the common ones and play the game throughout. But there are certain events and quests in the game that you can only achieve with those rare blades. This gameplay mechanic is a slight improvement for completionists, but for the average player, it adds a bit more strain that requires a bit more research about it. But even with all its improvements over the previous game, I still do have a few minor gripes. The gameplay to me feels somewhat slower than in Xenoblade 1. The enemies feel more like damage sponges to me, and since the gameplay became a bit more complex and involves way more mechanics than in Xenoblade 1, it makes it a bit harder to remember what you have to do. Another minor gripe I have is the fact that the map is so large, but your characters have no way of moving fast through the land. Yes, I know quick travel is available, just let me explain. In Xenoblade 1, you have gems that you can equip that can enhance your movement on the field, making your character walk faster. You can only equip a total of a 25% quick step gem to a single character, and gems don't stack, making your character move 25% faster. So it's better than nothing. And even though I have my problems with Xenoblade X, it included a run button which made exploration faster and easier and less time consuming. I know Xenoblade 2 was supposed to be a sequel to the first game, but you could have included a simple run button. Even if it's just a light jog and not a bolt like in Xenoblade X, I would have been happy. Even with my gripes, I still think Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is an absurdly amazing game for die-hard JRPG fans. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 would go on to sell more than 2 million units as of September 2020. Because of this massive influx in sales, we even got a definitive edition of the first game, making the game HD and improving the graphics and making small quality of life changes. The definitive edition sold well over 1 million units. In fact, it sold over 1.4 million in its lifetime. This once niche franchise received a new lease on life. And I'm also hearing rumors of a third game in development and also a sequel to Xenoblade Chronicles X. Xenoblade Chronicles, to me, is a franchise and a series that has been very near and dear to my heart. I would spend hours upon hours playing this game on my 3DS while waiting for my class to start or while waiting for the bus to go home. It also structured my love and appreciation for JRPGs in the long run. Even when capturing footage for this game, there have been multiple times where I would sit down for one session and play it for more than 2, maybe 4 hours. I might have been a little bit addicted, I'm not gonna lie. And the reason for that was because it was so damn good. The definitive edition on the Switch is obviously the way to go, seeing as though it has improvements and extra content over the original and the 3DS version. I still love going back and replaying the Wii version of this game. I'm very glad that they also released a definitive edition on the Switch because the prices for the originals was quite the nightmare for a while because yeesh. But thank you all for staying here and watching this video about me rambling on about my love for Xenoblade Chronicles. I was inspired by Chuck Conroy to make this video. I've been recently watching all of the Xenoblade Chronicles 2 Let's Play because I kind of fell off a little bit. I kind of stopped watching it around part 23, and that was about like 2-3 months ago. So I'm pretty much back on it, and I am watching all of it by now. By the time this video is out, I probably watched all of it. I'm pretty much caught up, but yeah. I know this isn't the usual video format I usually do, but I wanted to spice things up and make a video about something I enjoy every once in a while, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, that's gonna be it for me. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and it's been a long one, but yeah, don't be a stranger. See ya!